There is a tree that blooms without leaves. It does not need anything around it to show it is alive. It simply explodes in color when everything around it is still dry. Scientists looked at this and asked themselves, what does this tree have that others do not? And when they opened its bark, they found something no synthetic laboratory had ever been able to replicate with such precision. A molecule that enters the cancer cell, uses the tumor's own weapon against it, and makes the cell destroy itself from the inside. This is not a metaphor, it is biochemistry. And over the next 13 minutes, you are going to understand exactly how this works. No detours, no empty promises, no fluff. The purple ipe, known scientifically as Tabebuia avellanedae, is not new to Brazilian folk medicine. But what science has discovered about it goes far beyond what your grandparents knew. For decades, Brazilian and North American researchers studied a compound extracted from the inner bark of this tree called beta-lactone. This compound belongs to a chemical family called naphthoquinones, molecules that exist in nature with one unique characteristic. They can enter a cycle inside the cell, continuously producing and reproducing free radicals, like a power plant that never stops. In healthy cells, this process is controlled. In cancer cells, it becomes a collapse. And the reason for this is an enzyme that the tumor itself overproduces, one that transforms beta-lactone into a bomb activated from the inside out. Let us talk about something that almost nobody explains clearly when the subject is purple IPA and cancer. Inside many tumor cells, especially those of the pancreas, lung, and prostate, there is an enzyme called NQO1, which is present in concentrations far greater than in normal cells. This enzyme exists to protect the cell from oxidative stress. But when beta-lactone is present, NQO1 makes a fatal mistake. It tries to metabolize this compound, and in doing so, it triggers an uncontrollable redox cycle. The cell begins producing reactive oxygen species in quantities it cannot neutralize. The DNA fragments, the mitochondria collapse, and the cell activates its own death program, what we call apoptosis. The most impressive detail is this. Normal cells have very little NQO1, so they simply do not activate beta-lactone in the same way. The compound passes through them without causing the same destruction. The cell activity does not come from outside. It comes from the tumor's own biology. It creates the key that opens its own destruction. This is where the purple IPA connects to something even deeper in the way cancer works. Every cell in your body has a protein recycling system called the proteasome, a kind of disposal center that destroys damaged or unnecessary proteins. The problem is that cancer cells hijack this system to eliminate precisely the proteins that slow them down. Tumor suppressors, cell death signalers. They use the proteasome as an ally. Studies show that beta-lactone and other compounds from the purple IP can interfere with this system. When the proteasome is inhibited by the compound, proteins accumulate inside the tumor cell, creating an internal stress it cannot withstand. It is like clogging the only drain of a factory that produces industrial waste 24 hours a day. The structure collapses, and this happens far more intensely in tumor cells precisely because they depend on this system much more than healthy cells do. Now, the question you are probably asking yourself, but does this work in humans? That is the right question. And the honest answer is, it is being tested. Beta-lactone has already gone through clinical trials in the United States with a primary focus on pancreatic cancer, one of the most resistant to conventional treatments. Preliminary results showed that the compound has a tolerable safety profile and that the cell activity observed in the laboratory is partly maintained in patients. Research is still ongoing. There is no approval as a standalone treatment for any type of cancer. But what does exist is a solid, growing scientific foundation and genuine attention from serious researchers toward this compound. Brazil has a direct contribution to this research, which is remarkable considering that the tree is ours, the popular knowledge is ours, and for decades, nobody within formal science took it seriously. Beta-lactone is the most studied compound, but the purple IPA is not a single molecule plant. The bark also contains lapachol, another compound from the naphthoquinone family with anti-inflammatory activity and documented anti-tumoral studies dating back to the 1970s. There is also an action on NFKB, a transcription factor that cancer cells use to survive, inflame the surrounding environment, and resist chemotherapy. Compounds from the purple IPA have demonstrated in cellular studies the ability to block this pathway, reducing tumor resistance. Additionally, there are studies showing anti-angiogenic activity, meaning the compound hinders the formation of new blood vessels that the tumor uses to feed itself and grow. None of these effects alone is a cure, but together they paint the portrait of a plant that acts on multiple fronts of tumor development. And that is exactly what modern oncology seeks in new compounds. Being honest about this is important because your health deserves complete information, not just the exciting side of it. Beta-lactochone has a serious solubility problem. It does not dissolve well in water, which makes it enormously difficult to formulate a medication that the body can absorb efficiently. Researchers are working with nanoparticles and encapsulation systems to solve this. Another challenge is that at high doses, the same mechanism that destroys tumor cells can overwhelm normal cells. The balance between efficacy and toxicity is still being calibrated. And there is the problem of resistance. Some tumors can reduce the expression of NQO1 over time, which decreases the activation of the compound. Science knows these obstacles and is working on them, but whoever is selling you purple IP extract as a definitive solution probably did not tell you any of this. This is the part that matters most for those watching this video for a personal reason. First, purple IP bark tea is not equivalent to beta-lactochone at a therapeutic concentration. The compound exists in the plant, but the amount absorbed through a homemade infusion is unpredictable and likely far below the doses used in studies. This does not mean the tea is useless. It means you cannot treat it as a substitute for medical follow-up. Second, if you or someone close to you is undergoing cancer treatment, the conversation about natural compounds needs to happen with the responsible oncologist. Not because conventional medicine has all the answers, but because interactions between natural compounds and chemotherapy drugs exist and can be relevant. There is something deeply symbolic in the fact that the most beautiful tree in Brazil, the one that blooms without leaves, that shows itself most alive precisely when it seems most vulnerable, carries inside it a molecule that uses the cancer's own weakness against it. The tumor creates an enzyme to protect itself. That enzyme activates the compound from the EPA. The compound destroys the tumor. Nature built a trap, and cancer falls right into it. This is not poetry. This is documented in peer-reviewed scientific journals, in clinical trials conducted at serious universities, in decades of research that began precisely because someone decided to take seriously what Brazilian folk medicine already knew. The distance between traditional knowledge and scientific validation is shrinking, and when it closes completely, the purple IPA may be part of a generation of treatments that work more intelligently, not destroying everything indiscriminately, but finding the exact point of vulnerability in the tumor and pressing right there. If you made it this far, you care about your health in a way that goes beyond the surface, and that already puts you ahead of most people. Now, I want to know one thing. Tell me in the comments which state or country you are watching this video from. I want to understand where the people who truly seek this kind of in-depth health content come from. And if you know someone who is going through a cancer treatment process or who simply wants to better understand how the body works and how nature interacts with it, share this video, not as a solution, but as information. Because quality health information is still a scarce resource, and sharing it is an act of care. See you in the next video.